The stillness of the restaurant was her refuge, loneliness a familiar companion. Until an unfamiliar voice laden with urgency invaded her space and whispered, "Pretend I'm your boyfriend. Now." The world stopped. Instinct screamed to back away, but her eyes, upon meeting his, froze. This was not a stranger, but a ghost, the embodiment of a story she believed to be concluded forever. Hello, my friends. I am Linda, and this is Linda Love Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. The restaurant had a quiet atmosphere that Tuesday night. Few occupied tables, yellowish lights reflecting on the cutlery, a discreet musical background blending with the murmur of scattered conversations. Grace had chosen that place precisely for its discretion. She enjoyed dining alone, or at least she had learned to get used to it. It was the way she found to affirm to herself that she was at peace with her own company, although she knew deep down that there was a huge difference between being alone by choice and by lack of options. The wine glass rested almost untouched in front of her. Grace looked around as if observing a scene that did not belong to her. There were couples exchanging knowing glances, friends laughing loudly at a corner table, a distracted waiter adjusting glasses. It seemed that everyone had someone to share the night with, except her. Solitude weighed in a special way when contrasted with the lives of others. It was at that moment that a voice leaned close to her ear and whispered, low, firm, almost with a sense of urgency, "Pretend I'm your boyfriend. Now." Grace's body reacted before her mind. Her heart raced, her fingers trembled around the glass, and a chill ran down her spine. She turned, ready to repel the audacity, but the face she encountered paralyzed her speech. It wasn't a stranger. It was Aaron. Time hadn't erased him. He was there, more mature, marked by discreet wrinkles around the eyes, grey strands appearing in his beard. But the essence remained, that deep look that once made her believe in eternal promises, and that half-smile, always ready to open, that had often rescued her from youthful sorrows. A whirlwind of memories opened up immediately. The meetings after school, the naive plans to travel the world together, the notes hidden inside books, the hurried kisses to avoid getting caught by their parents, and, inevitably, the last day. Him leaving, a small suitcase in hand, saying he needed to pursue his dreams in another city, leaving behind a broken heart and a farewell letter too short to contain so much feeling. Grace faced the man sitting in front of her, trying to absorb the shock. They hadn't seen each other for more than 5 years. He was there before her, as if time had just taken a pause, but at the same time, every line on his face reminded her that life hadn't stopped for either of them. Aaron didn't seem less surprised. His eyes scanned her with a mix of caution and tenderness, as someone revisiting something always kept in memory. The request made seconds earlier, that unexpected phrase, was just an awkward excuse to escape the attention of some people at another table. But, for Grace, it meant much more. As if that innocent joke was the key that unlocked a chest of feelings she believed was sealed forever. "Gracie?" he said, using the nickname that only he and no one else used. His voice was still the same, perhaps a little deeper. "I can't believe it's you." Grace's mind was working frantically. In a matter of seconds, she relived those last painful moments between them. She was working 2 jobs, trying to help her sick mother, while he, at 22, had received an offer to work abroad. A unique opportunity, he said. A necessary separation, he argued. "I'll come back for you," he promised. But the letters became less frequent, the calls shorter, until everything boiled down to a silence that lasted a decade. "What are you doing here?" she finally managed to ask, her voice trembling. He glanced away at the table across the restaurant, where 3 men in suits were talking animatedly. "Those are clients. I'm trying to close an important deal, but I needed a moment to breathe. They don't stop talking about golf and investments," he explained, running his hand through his hair the same way he did when he was nervous years ago. "Sorry about the approach. I didn't think they would be dining here. I just wanted..." An excuse not to have to sit with them, and I said you were my girlfriend. I never imagined I would find you. Grace noticed a slight tremor in his hands when he picked up the glass that the waiter had just brought. Something about the vulnerability of that gesture softened the armor she had built over the years. There was something sincere in his discomfort, something that reminded her of the insecure young man he had been before ambition took over. "You're different," she said, breaking the silence that had settled. "Different how?" he asked, with that genuine curiosity he had always had. "More tired, perhaps. Your eyes have something different." Aaron smiled wistfully. "The corporate world isn't exactly what I imagined," he admitted. "When I left here, I thought the world out there would be all about achievements and adventures. No one warned me about the 80-hour work weeks, impersonal hotels, and dinners like this one." Something in that confession touched Grace. She had always imagined his life was filled with success and joy, while she stayed behind, dealing with the daily struggles, taking care of her sick mother until her passing 3 years ago, assuming debts and slowly rebuilding her life. Discovering that his path had also been difficult brought a strange sense of justice. "And you? What happened all these years?" She hesitated. How to summarize a decade in a few sentences? How to talk about the daily struggle, the sleepless nights at the hospital, the courses she took on weekends to get a promotion, the small victory of buying her tiny apartment after so many years of saving? "I'm fine," she replied with a half-smile. "My mother passed away 3 years ago. The treatment was long and difficult, but I was with her until the end. Now I work at a publishing house. Nothing grand, but I like what I do." Aaron looked at her with genuine admiration. "You were always the stronger one of the two of us." That sentence completely disarmed Grace. For years she had felt weak for not being able to move on emotionally, for still occasionally dreaming about what could have been, for keeping, in a little box hidden at the back of the closet, the few notes he had left. "Why didn't you ever get in touch again?" The question slipped out before she could contain it. Aaron lowered his eyes to the napkin, which he was now nervously folding and unfolding. "At first I thought it would be temporary, that I would work for a year or two, save some money, and then come back. But each promotion brought more responsibilities, moves to other countries. Time passed so quickly." He paused. "And to be honest, I was scared." "Scared of what?" "Of finding out you had moved on. That you had found someone better, someone who didn't abandon you when you needed them most." He lifted his eyes, and Grace saw something she never imagined. Regret. Each year that passed, it became harder to return. How do I explain that I threw away what we had for a career that doesn't even make me happy? The restaurant around them seemed to have disappeared. That suspended moment in time belonged only to the two of them. Grace felt a familiar pang in her chest, that mix of pain and longing that had accompanied her for so long. "Do you know what's ironic?" she asked, gently swirling her wineglass. "For years I imagined this moment. I fantasized about what I would say if I met you again. I prepared whole speeches in my head." She smiled sadly. "And now, I can't remember any of them." Aaron reached across the table, hesitating, almost touching her fingers but pulling back at the last moment. A gesture loaded with meaning, the desire for connection, and the acknowledgement that perhaps he no longer had that right. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, Gracie. I know that. But I want you to know there hasn't been a day that I haven't thought about you." It seemed that their meeting had happened at just the right moment, as if destiny wanted to bring them back together. The waiter approached to ask if they wanted dessert, momentarily breaking the spell. When he left, something had subtly changed. Aaron's confession hung between them like a fragile bridge over an abyss of lost time. "How long are you staying in the city?" Grace asked, surprising even herself with the interest. 3 days, he replied. "The contract we're negotiating is big. If we close it, I'll probably have to come here more often." Grace nodded, absorbing the information. 3 days. Such a short time to process 5 years of absence. Part of her wanted to protect herself, keep a distance, not risk reliving that pain. Another part, however, felt an almost irresistible curiosity to discover who he had become, to understand if that bond that once united them still existed in some form. "Do you still collect keychains?" she asked, recalling the peculiar hobby he had in his youth. Aaron's face lit up with the memory. "Actually, yes, I have one from each country I've visited." He hesitated before adding, "Including the one you gave me on our dating anniversary, the one with a heart key." Something inside Grace trembled at this revelation. The idea that he had carried a part of her to all those distant places, for all those years, touched a vulnerable spot she thought was protected. As the night progressed, the words flowed more easily. Aaron talked about the countries he had lived in, the cultures he had encountered, but also about the loneliness of hotels and the superficiality of corporate relationships. Grace shared the small triumphs of her life, the book of poetry she had helped edit that became an unexpected success, the jasmine plant she tended on her small balcony, the book club she attended on Wednesdays. It was as if they were discovering adult versions of each other, recognizable, yet transformed by time and experiences. Behind the differences, however, there was a mutual understanding, a unique language that apparently even time hadn't been able to completely erase. When they finally asked for the bill, the restaurant was almost empty. Aaron's clients had left long ago, after briefly waving to him. "Can I walk you home?" he asked as they stepped out into the cool autumn night. Grace hesitated. It was a small gesture, but loaded with meaning. Allowing him to see her current space would be like letting him back into her life, even if symbolically. "I think I'm not ready for that yet," she replied honestly. He nodded, understanding. "I understand. It was a lot for just one night, wasn't it?" "Yes," she agreed. A taxi slowly passed by on the street, and Grace signalled for it to stop. Before getting in, she turned to Aaron one last time. Maybe we can have coffee tomorrow," she suggested, surprising herself. "There's a cafe near my work. Nothing too fancy, but they have a carrot cake you'd like." His face lit up with that smile she knew so well, hopeful but restrained, as if he was afraid to hope too much. "I'd love that," he replied. Grace got into the taxi, and as it pulled away, she watched through the rear-view mirror the solitary figure of Aaron standing on the sidewalk, watching her leave. There was a strange feeling in her chest. It was not exactly happiness, nor sadness, but something in between. A possibility. A door she had believed to be locked for years now seemed slightly ajar. She didn't know what would happen in the coming days. Whether that coffee would lead to another meeting, whether they could build something new over the ruins of the past, or whether she would realize that some stories simply need to remain in the chapter where they were interrupted. But that night, as the taxi moved through the quiet streets of the city, Grace allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not the naive hope of youth, but the kind seasoned by experience, which knows the risks and yet chooses to take a step forward. After all, life rarely offers second chances. But when it does, it seems to remind us that everything has its right time, that lost encounters can reunite, and that true loves, in some mysterious way, always return to us. Perhaps some stories are not just waiting for a new chapter. Perhaps they are waiting for the perfect moment to be lived again. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.